This video is going to appear rather complicated and there's going to be a lot of big words, big concepts, a lot of science, but in essence what I am trying to do is break down something extremely complex into the most simple and digestible form possible so you can comprehend what we're trying to do here. And the essence of this is very, very simple. You become who you think you are. And when I use the phrase, your nervous system cannot hold the body you want, that is true across neuroscience, across science, across biology, across physiology. Everything crosses over. And I've worked with close to 1,000 people now through body transformations, through fat loss, through the inverse, trying to gain weight, gain muscle. And I noticed this scary theme over time that some people just seemed to succeed and some people didn't. And then there was a massive kind of sub niche within those niches of people that would get to where they want to get to and then go back to exactly where they were in the first place. And I'm an incredibly curious human being that wanted to understand this to its full extent. And in order to understand transformation on the physical plane, you have to understand it on the mental and the spiritual. That's why they call it the mind, body, spirit. So what we're going to do here is we're going to break down why you can't achieve the body you want. And that's because you are actively, biomechanically pushing it away. And this is going to be a lecture. This isn't me lecturing you as if like, oh, you must listen to me, but this is going to be done in a lecture format. It's something slightly different to what I like to do. It's going to be very deep. It's going to be very complex. But if you genuinely pay attention throughout this video and really stick with me, this will genuinely be the greatest investment in for your time that you've ever made into physical transformation. And like I said, we're going to touch on neuroscience. We're going to touch on psychology. We're going to touch on identity. We're going to touch on psychotherapy and laws of the universe as well when it comes to transformation, because they all are essentially the same thing. So when it comes to changing your body, you pretty much tried to do the whole thing wrong the entire time. You've been trying to change the symptom and not the source. And whenever you ask somebody what they're trying to do when it comes to losing weight, building, whatever the goal is, let's just say that it's trying to build your dream body. For most people, that's lean, that's being leaner, having less body fat, and having slightly more muscle. Everyone's tried the same things. You know, they've tried to change their diet. They've tried to change their training plan. They've decided they're going to shift their routine over. But the problem with these is you're basically putting an input on a system which has already decided the outcome. And this is why no matter how many times you try and change your diet, whatever it is, your training plan, you're like, I'm going to do cardio now, or I'm going to do this, you always seem to end up back where you were before you started. And the body doesn't actually respond to these things, like your inputs, so your training, your physical, it doesn't respond to any of this the way in which everyone has told you that it has done. Your body actually responds to something called your state or your identity. And your identity is essentially the narrative from which you tell yourself, about the world, the stories and beliefs you have about things, about medicine, about fat loss as an example. And your nervous system's got one job, and that nervous system is designed to keep you safe. So when your narrative is going completely out of line with what you're trying to bring into fruition, your nervous system is going to repel it away. And we're obviously going to go through and break down how that happens across different fronts as we go through this. And like I said, when you're putting these inputs on a dysregulated nervous system, your outputs are also going to be dysregulated as well. So that's why I've left the line here, like you can hit your macros correctly, train with perfect form, train hard, sleep 8 hours, and your body will always find its way back to the same place. And you probably sat there at times and thought, I work harder than this person. I manage my food, I manage my sleep better, I'm more organized, I meal prep, but this person has what I want and they don't do those things. And it's simply because you haven't changed the system running the show quietly beneath it all. And then you can make progress doing this, but the problem is you're always eventually going to go back to where it is when you started, because that's how your body and nervous system was designed to operate. And you know, like I said, you've done everything right and things haven't changed. You've done the macros, you know, you've tracked your calories, you've done all of this fucking shit. You've been consistent and you might have seen some progress, but then you go back. Training wise, you know, again, you're doing the right things. You're training harder, you're getting stronger, you're doing your movements. Why is somebody else who's not putting in half of this effort getting the result that you're not getting? And you're disciplined, and this is the worst part. And discipline's a word which is massively overused. You're disciplined to the process, but even the word discipline in of itself implies that that's not something that you naturally do. You only have to be disciplined to do the things in which you don't like to do. Therefore, is it really something that's in line with your character? That's a big question for you to ask there. So like I said, the problem is never what you were doing. It was actually the container that you were doing the inputs inside of, and that container was your nervous system. And think of it this way: if you pour new water into a dirty glass, you will still get dirty water. So no matter how clean, how fucking crystallized, hydrolyzed, alkaline this water is, it's still going to be dirty because the glass you're putting inside is dirty until that glass is clean. And like I said, your body operates identically. Like, you can do the perfect kind of food, macros, have the perfect training, sleep, but if your nervous system is constantly running on threat, the output's always going to be reflected, and it's not going to be a true reflection of those inputs. And I want you to imagine that your nervous system is a glass, and your identity is what glass is made of. And until you change the two of them, it's always going to go back to the exact same shape. And this has nothing to do with, like, this is not a motivational concept. This is actually physiological. And that's the one thing I want you to take away from this lecture. This is not going to be about, this is how you manifest your dream body, and this is just a concept. This is actually facts. And we're going to run through this video how this is actually manifesting within your reality in of itself. So this is the illusion. We go at things when we're trying to change anything physical about ourselves through a very mechanical model. So we look at everything has an input versus output. So we always think that more effort produces more results. If we eat less, we're going to lose more weight. If we move more, we're going to burn more calories. But we're so fucking naive because that's not the case. And it's like things like calorie deficit. We think that the only thing that matters is eating less than what you were a week beforehand and you'll lose weight. And we think that the body is simply just a calculator. And here's just another idea for you to bounce around. We are the most adaptable species in history. We've quite literally changed and evolved over hundreds of millions of years. And you think that your body is as simple as, if I just eat a little bit less, I'll lose some more weight. No, we were built to survive. We're built to be in line with our environment and built to adapt. That's one of the biggest lies in which everyone's been sold. We've also been told that discipline is how you're going to get to where you want to get to, and the reason you fail is because you don't either have enough discipline or enough willpower. But like I broke down initially with the kind of word discipline, it's essentially saying you're doing something that you don't want to do, which is out of line with your character. You only have to be disciplined to do things which you don't want to do. It's never going to work, because you're basically signaling to yourself, this is not who I am, and that's why it requires so much discipline. And if you just tell the body what to do, it will do it, and we just have to control it. And that's why a lot of people are drawn towards the gym and fitness and all that sort of stuff, because it's just something in which they can control, which is never the case. And one thing that we can learn as human beings is if we ever want to attract anything, a large part of it is out of our control. Even our existence in of itself is out of control. And what we're looking to do is switch from this mechanical model to the biofeedback model, and actually realize that our state is our output. So your body's output is actually determined by your nervous system state, not the inputs. And your state is emotional, it's mental, it's how you feel, it's the emotion behind what you're doing. It's whether you feel like this is in line with who you are. That's your state. Your state is how you do things, not what you do. Another idea is that safety equals fat loss. Like, your body will only burn fat efficiently when it doesn't perceive threat. And you have to imagine that why would your body hold on to fat? Like, what is fat in of itself? Like, what is fat on your body? It is fuel. It is fuel for a rainy day. And your body, when it senses that it is under threat, of course it's going to store fat, because your body is built to adapt and survive. So actually, when your body is storing fat, your body's working very, very effectively and efficiently. You just do not know why. And if I just move my stuff over, put myself in the top right corner, you'll be able to see everything here a little bit easier. And then another part, identity fills the gap. So your identity is the set point in which your nervous system operates by. So like I said, your identity is the story and narrative you have about yourself and the world. Your identity governs your subconscious mind, it governs your nervous system. And your nervous system will protect that narrative because that is its job. Your narrative is safety to your body, and your nervous system will protect it. So then when you're doing things which are out of line, or you're trying to achieve something which is out of line with the narrative, your body's naturally going to repel away from it, and the state in which you do it out of is going to be that of threat. And that's why we need to be looking at the biofeedback model and not just the mechanical one. And this is a self-defeating loop in which every single person gets themselves stuck in. We think when we need to get, we just need a little bit more discipline. We just need to do a little bit more. We need to just work a little bit harder. And it makes the problem fucking worse. Because the more discipline that you have, the more your body will find its way back to where it was that you initially started. And you have to imagine that this is like a pendulum effect, a pendulum swing. The higher you pull back the pendulum, so you're really disciplined, you're really using so much willpower, you'll drop it, and however high your discipline and willpower is going, it's going to swing back the other way. And that is why you'll find people that go through these chronic restriction and binge protocols and processes their entire life, because it's quite literally just the pendulum swinging the other way. If you want to know what this is known in biology as, this is homeostasis. Your body's job is to get back to baseline. Very, very simple. We've got a few different ways in which we do that. Like I said, you've got chronic threat state. So this is governed by the hormone cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And what happens is your cortisol baseline is chronically elevated. Your nervous system interprets the environment, including your diet, as a threat to survival. Like I said, if this diet is something which isn't in line with your internal narrative, you perceive it as threat subconsciously. Okay? And this is why you'll always go back to where you were, because that's your body's safe space. You do this physiologically through the defense. You store more fat. Muscle synthesis goes down, so you literally build less muscle. Your digestion becomes impaired. That's why a lot of people that struggle with anxiety, I say every single person that has IBS struggles with anxiety to some degree. And that's why their digestion becomes impaired, because they're constantly in a nervous system state called their sympathetic state, which is the fight or flight response, same as a chronic threat state. Your hunger signals get distorted. Now your body is working actively against you towards the goal. And what do you do when that happens? You try and discipline yourself harder, and then we go back in a ridiculously efficient manner. And then, like I said, the restriction and collapse. This is where I mentioned about willpower depleting, and a binge always follows the restriction. And your identity belief is I always fail is reinforced, because the more times in which you fail, your subconscious, your identity starts to assign itself with the narrative, I always fail, I always fail, I always mess up. And if that's your story, your nervous system is going to bring you back to failing, back to messing up, because that is its safe space. And your set point is always where your identity lies. And it will always go back to that point until you shift that identity and narrative in which you have about yourself. So there's something called the survival hierarchy. And your body essentially has this priority stack of what it needs to protect, and body composition is at the bottom. So it only receives resources when everything above it is resolved, because it doesn't need to change your body composition until it's got everything else managed in the first place. So it's obviously surviving immediate threat. So cortisol and adrenaline, hormones in your body which are related to stress, are the two key ones here. And all non-essential processes become suppressed when you're in this immediate threat. Blood is diverted to your limbs, your digestion switches off, your immune function goes down. The second step is regulation of blood sugar. So your brain constantly demands glucose. When you're under stress, your body will break down muscle protein via gluconeogenesis to supply it. So this is why people's insulin levels are constantly elevated, because you're going through a process called gluconeogenesis. Even if you don't consume carbohydrates, you are still spiking your blood sugars to upregulate them to give your brain fuel. It's then maintaining homeostasis, so keeping your body temperature regulated, the pH in your body, your fluid balance, your osmolarity. The nervous system will defend the internal environment it knows, including the body where it is held for years. So like I said, homeostasis is just a message, a narrative that you have about yourself, which is where you expect things to be. And a certain way, a certain body composition is homeostasis, because that's what it is in your mind. It will get back to that point. And body composition change is the last thing that your body wants to do. And this is where building muscle, burning fat, this is the last point of transformation. This is why a lot of people never get there, because they're stuck, for one, in immediate threat. They can't regulate the blood sugars. The homeostasis has a completely different set point. So they never actually get to the point of composition change because they're still stuck on steps 1, 2, and 3. And it is then in this state when we can start to make direct and significant changes to the body because the nervous system is in a healthy spot. And this is why your nervous system is the reason why you can't achieve the body you want. It's actually pushing you away. So let's go into the science of things, and we're going to go into some quite complex theories, but I'm going to break them down in a really, really simple way so you can understand. Like, it's not my job to sit here and be fucking hyper intelligent. It's my job to break things down in a way in which serves you. So there's something called the polyvagal ladder. It sounds very, very complicated, but it's just essentially the state in which your nervous system can be. Invented by a neuroscientist called Stephen Porges. He's a French man. And the theory of this is that the autonomic nervous system, it's not binary. It's got 3 different states in which it can act in. And your physiology is different in each. So big takeaway here, your physiology, your physical biology, can change depending on your nervous system state. And a really easy way for you guys to conceptualize this and visualize this is a very simple one. When you get mentally, sexually stimulated, your physiology changes. Your blood pressure goes up. Your body temperature increases. Blood flow goes to different areas of the body. You naturally find yourself in a different kind of mental state. Your adrenaline is slightly higher. And that's just a sign that your mind can affect this on a very, very simple degree. So you've got 3 states in which you can act out. So your ventral vagal state, which is your real basic, this is your real healthy place to be in. And this is when you're being socialized, you're connected, you're safe. And by the way, when I say safe, that means you're actually feeling safe. That's not you're in a safe space, because a lot of the time you can be in a safe space, but your body still interprets it as threat. And this is where we need to be 99% of the time. This is where you're growing. This is when we're repairing the muscle in which we've damaged to rebuild in the gym. This is when neuroplasticity is rewiring itself. So neuroplasticity is essentially your brain has billions and billions and millions of different pathways through neurons in which it can send information around the brain. And this largely determines the behavior in which we do, because you've got to imagine information getting sent around like fucking lasers around your brain, and that, like I said, that's determining your mood, your habits, and how you think about things. And this, your neuroplasticity can't rewire or grow or recover when you're in other states. You have to be in ventral vagal. This is also known as your parasympathetic state. It's even things on a hormonal front, like your testosterone cannot be replenished if you're not being relaxed. Your growth hormone can't either, 2 hormones which are really important for body composition. Your digestion won't work. You can't repair tissue in your body. Your immune function is disengaged because you're always out of this state right here. But when you're in this healthy state, digestion's better, you're recovering and rebuilding from what you've done in the gym. Your immune level's high. This is why people that are constantly stressed, they're always sick, because their immune system is always being compromised. And this is where your body's being allowed to change. And then you've got something called the sympathetic state. This is your fight or flight state. And believe it or not, you probably find yourself in this place a lot more than what you think you are. And a good question to ask yourself is, how often in a day do you find that your shoulders are raised and tight, or you're clenching your jaw, or your fist is raised? That's a sign in which you're in fight or flight and you're not aware of it. And the hormones in which are usually engaged there, once again, you've got cortisol, adrenaline, these elevated. You'll often find that you get other ones such as your epinephrine, norepinephrine, that make you feel bolted. This is why when you find that you're in the sympathetic state, more often than not, you wake up in the morning like dunk, and you're awake and you're alert. That's not a good thing. You're actually in fight or flight. And during this state, fat storage is preferential, especially visceral. So that fat that you hold around your midsection, visceral fat, your body's going to hold on to it. Your testosterone, your growth hormone are both suppressed, your digestion is slowed down. Your body is quite literally preparing to get into a fight or run away as quickly as possible. And that's because your mind, your nervous system is perceiving something as threat. And then you've got the last layer of this, and this is dorsal vagal. This is where we see shutdown, freeze, collapse. So you can see total physiological withdrawal, your metabolism is slowed down. This is where you're going to get things like numbness, high levels of fatigue, disassociation. And that's because your body has entered something called conservation mode, the most counterproductive state for change. And like it says down the right-hand side, body transformation requires you to be in ventral vagal. It requires you to be regulated, your nervous system to be in a healthy spot. Most people are doing this out of the sympathetic state, and this is why they're always failing. And this is why it's so frustrating that nobody speaks about this, because this is nothing to do with discipline. Like, it's just a physiological impossibility. You cannot change your body when it's under threat. Like, it's not going to work. You're governed by your nervous system, and it hasn't authorized you to do the changes in which you're looking to elicit. So it's all about being in that ventral vagal state or your parasympathetic state, so everything can function as it's supposed to. Now, there's another part of your brain of this process called the HPA axis, and this is basically your chronic stress engine. The HPA stands for your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. I can't talk today, I need a water. And when this becomes chronically activated, this axis produces a full body physiological state that directly opposes every single goal of body transformation. So it's part of your brain, and it kind of sits in the middle of it. And when this part of your brain is being triggered all the time, it's putting your body in this constant state of stress. And stress, cortisol, is the most catabolic hormone in your body. And I touched on it a little bit in the previous slide, where when you're in this state, when you've got that sympathetic nervous system, when your HPA axis is activated, you're going to see more visceral fat. You're going to see less muscle. You're going to see more hunger and cravings, because hunger is caused by something called your ghrelin, and your leptin controls how full you feel, and cortisol is directly suppressing your leptin levels to how full you feel and elevating how hungry you feel. Okay? And not only that, it also upregulates cravings for more calorifically dense food, so high reward food through your dopaminergic system. And this is a hormonal command. This is not a character flaw. Like, you're quite literally just craving more shit dopaminergic food because your body is in a state of stress. And what does your body do when it's in a state of stress? It seeks for any sort of relief from that state. It's going to do anything it can do to get your dopamine up. That's why when you're feeling stressed, what do? You reach for your phone. Easy. You reach for shit food. You binge, because it takes away that feeling of stress, but you haven't turned the switch off. Because in your brain, you're still actively stressing all day. And this is just a position that so many people get themselves caught in, and they're always like, oh, I can't stop binging, I can't stop doing these highly dopaminergic activities. It's because you're chronically stressed all the time, and your body is seeking for relief from those things. And I want to touch on something called somatic intelligence. And somatic is essentially emotional. Now, two individuals, Peter Levine, Bessel van der Kolk, and the field of somatic experiencing have established this clearly, that the body stores identity as tissue. And a great quote for this is, the body keeps score. You've probably heard that before. And another one is, trauma is not what happens to you, it's what's happening inside you. We store trauma. Now, every single pattern when it comes to chronic muscle tension, every time your posture collapses, every dysregulated breathing systems, they're not random. They are literally your body's encoding of something called your self-concept. And your self-concept is your identity. It's who you believe you are. It's a narrative which you tell about yourself. So the history of how safe or unsafe the world has felt is literally written into the fascia within your muscle, the vagal tone, the gut, and the HRV baseline. So if you find that your HRV is skewed all the time, you've got poor somatic intelligence within your body. You've got poor somatic regulation, poor emotional regulation. Gut as well. I touched on the idea of IBS earlier on within this video, and people that struggle regulating their nervous system always have IBS, and doctors don't know what to do about it. They feed you Imodium, they feed you anything that can kind of give you a gut relief, but they don't sort the problem out, which is your somatic nervous system that's running show. So this is why affirmations do not work. Everyone likes to stand in front of the mirror and say, oh, I'm fucking great, oh, I'm this. It means nothing. You can change your thoughts and still feel the same in your body, because the body has not updated its file. And the file is driven by your nervous system, which is derived from your felt sense of experience, not cognitive instruction. Now, your nervous system, your subconscious mind, they're essentially the exact same thing, because your subconscious mind runs your nervous system. It uses and learns by the language of emotion. And this is why trauma is a fantastic example as to how powerful this is. Because with trauma, all you have to do is experience something once for it to permanently affect your body and you for the rest of your life. Because it has such a degree of emotional intensity behind it, it permanently scars your body. And you can tell yourself all day, oh, I'm this, and this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm fucking... It means nothing, because your nervous system doesn't interpret it. It interprets the language of emotion behind it. And just one final thing here is that neuroplasticity requires new somatic information delivered in a regulated state. So the body changes when it's given a new felt experience, not just the idea. So when you have the idea of something, that's not enough. You have to have the emotion, the feeling. Emotion is energy, emotion, paired with that new experience in which you're looking to feed it. Go back to the idea of trauma once again. You only have to have trauma once to permanently affect the rest of your life. So it's all of these different things, your HP axis, the state in which your body's in terms of the polyvagal theory, and your somatic intelligence, how that's stored in your body. All of these things are constantly affecting your nervous system, a constant science and feedback to you that your nervous system is in a current state, which is not going to be conducive to you getting to where you want to get to. And I like touching on neuroplasticity because it's I touched on it a little bit in the previous slide, but it's quite a nice visual way for you to kind of see this. And it's all, once again, driven by your identity and where that set point lies. So your brain can change, but it will always change towards to the familiar until you understand the mechanisms and work behind it and change that deliberately. So you've got three parts that affect your neuroplasticity and drivers from it. So you've got something called your reticular activating system, your RAS, and that is quite literally just the lens in which you see the world through. So you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you perceive it. Your perception is driven by your identity. So if you notice that when you're looking at things, you're noticing and you're picking out certain things, certain colors, or a really visual example for you is when you go into a restaurant, you look at a menu, you'll always pick out certain things first. Now, people that have been going to the gym for a while will actually look at the menu and go, that's higher in protein, that's this, I don't want that. Now, people that have got food-related issues might go, oh, like, this has got too many calories in it, I can't have that. And all of these things, the menu hasn't changed, but the person looking at it has. And that's why two people can be looking at the same problem and not see it the same way, because their reticular activating system is just wired very, very differently, because their belief system, their identity, their self-concept, their narrative is very different as well. And that's why two people literally see the same thing in two different ways entirely. And until you change the identity, you won't be able to change what you're actually seeing through reality. And this is something common which I see with people with body dysmorphia, body image issues, that because they're constantly seeing the issue, because their brain perceives it as an issue, even when that issue starts to dissipate, they will forever see it. The mirror doesn't change, only the person looking at it does. And that's why the mirror can still sometimes change, but the way in which you look at it still won't change it, and you'll warp it to match the narrative in which you have and the identity which you have. Hebbian learning, very, very simple put, neurons that fire together, wire together. And every time you basically run this same script, your self-narrative, saying things like, I always fail, I'm always supposed to be fat, I don't have the genetics, this is just unsustainable. We're basically making that neural pathway stronger, because the more in which you believe it, your brain is going, I'm getting efficient at doing this, and it'll find ways to make it happen very, very quickly. And so the beliefs which you have become structural. They're no longer a thought, it's actually a brain and neurological architecture. And architecture resists renovation. Think about it. You designed the architecture of a building from the ground up. That's going to resist renovation because it's already got its foundation set, and it takes a lot to change that. And then there's something called your neuroplasticity window. So your nervous system updates its model of self only when it receives new emotional somatic experience from the regulated state. And this is why visualization works, but only when it's done in a really relaxed state with a felt sense of embodiment and not anxious desire. The body must rehearse the new identity as familiar and not aspirational. And this is something we'll get into at the end of this video. So that's just a touch on all the science here. But let's get into the philosophy of things. And some people like to look at things all through a science lens. Some people like a more philosophical approach. And to be honest with you, you can always combine the two. The two overlap really nicely. So I like the quote, as above, so below, as within, so without. And this has come from Hermetic philosophy, something called the law of correspondence. Now, all of these universal laws, they essentially say the same thing. Your inner world is being reflected in your outer world. So as above, in this physical plane, is so below in the mental and spiritual plane. Everything that's going on outside is because you've got it within. Or in the other case, everything that you don't have on the outside is because you don't have it on the inside. If you don't have health on the inside, you won't have health physically. If you don't have wealth internally, you won't have wealth externally. It can be applied to a fair few different things. And this isn't a metaphor, by the way. It's actually a description of basic nervous system mechanics. So this principle basically states that all planes of existence mirror one another, and that the inner world and the outer world are not separate, but they're correspondent. This was originally written like hundreds of years ago, and then neuroscience basically caught up to then confirm this. And again, if there's anything that you take away from this video, even if you don't fucking take anything away, the body is always a perfect expression of the identity that inhabits it. The posture, the tension patterns, the metabolic tendencies, the fat distribution, the muscle development, they are not random. They are the inner mechanisms of you made physical. This is just a physical manifestation of everything going on right here. And that's very powerful to know. And this is the equation that nobody teaches you. And this is what I've been talking about this entire video, is that your identity equals your bodily expression. So your inner world will determine your body composition, your self-concept, your nervous system's model of self will determine all of those things. And you cannot outwork this law. The body is always correct. One thing in which people like to say is, my body's just not working. It's not this, it's not that. And it's like, no, your body's working perfectly fine. It's the inner mechanisms that aren't. It's just a perfect printout of the identity it belongs to. Change the file, we change the printout. You change what's looking at the mirror, you change the reflection. And I just wanted to touch on like this pushing thing, because once again, we believe that the answer to everything is just be more disciplined, have more willpower. It's a fucking myth. And Carl Jung, who's one of the greatest psychologists of all time, spoke about a concept, and it's a hard one to say, enantiodomia. And Jung basically described enantiodomia as a tendency for all things to transform into their opposite when pushed to extremes. So at the start of this video, I outlined something called the pendulum effect, and that's exactly what enantiodomia is. So the harder you restrict, the more intensely the body defends. The tighter you try and control something, the more violent the release. Like, this is why people that, and again, I like to give these physical concepts for you and analogies for you to visualize, but the person who is really anxious in a relationship that holds on so tightly pushes the other person away. And the harder they tight, the more the person pushes themselves away. Your body's doing the same thing. The harder you push, the more you restrict, the more intensely the body defends. It's not weakness, by the way. It's just the law of opposites, polarity, operating exactly as they should do. So the nervous system always produces an equal and opposite reaction to extreme suppression. It's a bit like Newton's law, like what goes up must come down, what goes down must go up. And the answer is not harder control, it's simply integration. So if something requires discipline, it's not integrated into your character yet. You don't have to be disciplined to brush your teeth, you just do it. You don't have to be disciplined to make your bed, you just do it. You have to be disciplined to go to the gym. You have to be disciplined to eat the right food. Eventually, all that discipline is going to dissipate somewhere else because it's not integrated as part of who you are. And again, linking things back, there's something called the law of rhythm in Hermetic philosophy as well. And it basically, again, it's this same effect. It's the pendulum effect. What swings to the right, what swings to the left. Everything flows out and in. What rises, falls. The binge restriction process is, once again, another example of this. It's not a character flaw. It's just the law of rhythm operating through an unregulated nervous system. And this extreme restriction has an extreme release, which is extreme binging. Mastery is not eliminating the swing. It's reducing the amplitude, creating a nervous system stable enough where the pendulum barely moves. We're not looking to be living like this. We're looking to be living like this. And that's when we know that the nervous system is stable. And that's when transformation becomes effortless. So how are we going to integrate this into your life? There's a 3-layer model: regulated effort, and the actual practice of identity-based transformation. You have to do the inner work to achieve the outer work. So the 3-layer model, and most people fail this because they start at level 3, which is the behavior, which never works, because behavior is part of a multiple step chain. Behavior comes off the back end of feeling an emotion from a thought. The thought comes from the identity. So when you try and change this final part of the chain, you've neglected everything above it, and that's why behavior never sticks. But what we're looking to do here is start with somatic regulation. So a real nervous system reset. So doing things like breath work, amazing. Physiological sighs. Do you know when you sigh, you're like, oh, like it's actually just your nervous system trying to regulate itself. Cold exposure works. Somatic anchoring also works. Things like journaling, fantastic. And this is the foundation. Nothing above it works until you get that nervous system regulated, because a dysregulated nervous system will undermine every effort that you do from this point onwards. You have to be relaxed. You have to be in that parasympathetic state, the ventral vagal state. You saw at the start of this video that why things have to happen in that state, because that is where things are allowed to flow, change, adapt, grow, repair. You have to be here. Once you've established that regulation, you're calm, you're relaxed, we can start to shift the identity. And this new self in which we're looking to create comes naturally to us, and not just like, I want to be like this person. You can start to embody them. It's quite literally fake it till you make it. And this visualization has to come from this regulated state. That's the first thing. Always goes back to step 1. It has to be a felt sense of embodiment of you in this future body, not desire, but familiarity. So whenever you feel you're desiring something, you're basically saying, I'm not that. When you want something, you're saying, I am not capable of having that until I have it. When you want it, you're basically saying, this is out of reach for me. Your body works the same way. You don't get the body you want, you get the body you deserve. And the body you deserve is what your identity is in line with. So visualization, an amazing tool to basically go, allow your nervous system to accept the body in which it's been repelling away as threat this entire time. And then from that point, we can start to apply behavior. And this still requires effort. You know, it still requires an element of willpower, a little bit of discipline, but not too much, but from a different regulated state. Then you're doing the training. Then you're doing the nutrition. You're sleeping. You're doing this consistently. And it gives a completely different neurochemical environment for these transformations to occur. So you're going to experience more BDNF, which is a brain-oriented chemical, higher levels of testosterone, more growth hormone, better regulated dopamine. All of these things start working for you. And this is why the same approach, the same protocol, the same diet works differently in different people, because they are doing it from a different state and a different identity. That's why you see someone go, oh, I tried this training program and it didn't work, and this person got big doing it, because they did it from a different identity and a different somatic state, a different and regulated nervous system. 2 different approaches. And there's just a few here talking about the kind of regulation toolkit that you can do. So it's a physiological sigh, relaxing, cold exposure. Another one, you really have to learn to regulate your nervous system there. When you get into cold water, you start to panic. You have to regulate yourself. Somatic anchoring, like I said, you can do journaling, you can do anything cathartic, speaking to people. Therapy works the same thing. It's like grounding breath work and stuff that you can do, body scanning. But I prefer thinking and writing. It's a really cathartic practice. And HRV training, so heart rate variability. So again, breathwork's one of these things. You can do high intense output cardio. Also another amazing tool, because you get your heart rate massively high and you let it come back down. More amazing tools in which you can do. In terms of getting this identity shift, you have to do this in two levels, like I said, and there's 2 practices really which you can do. The first thing is regulation. Like I said, you have to be done in the parasympathetic state. When you do it in the sympathetic state, it actually works the other way. So when you're in fight or flight, you're basically saying that I can't, like, it starts to perceive it as threat, because you do it in that state, in which is then assuming that this is a bad thing for the body. So every visualization, every time you journal, or every future self narrative exercise in which you do, make sure that you're relaxing before you do it. First thing in the morning is a great time, because you're naturally more relaxed. And this is when new neural coding and acceptance into that nervous system can occur. And work from familiarity, not aspiration. So, like I said, most people tend to visualize from desire, like, I need this, I want this. But once again, the nervous system reads this desire as lack, and lack is threat. So, when you want something, you're basically saying, I lack it, therefore I'm under threat right now because I don't have that thing. So, you have to basically visualize in the role in which you've got it. So, embody this new identity as if it's what you are right now. And the question is not, what do I want? But how does it feel to be like the person that has this thing? Be, do, have. Be the person, do the things that they do, you'll have the things. We often think, when I become the person, I'll do the things and be the person. It doesn't work. You have to be the person first. Felt sense, not visual. Like I said, visualization is not about what you see, it's about what you feel. So it's about feeling confidence. It's about feeling how you feel in that new outfit, which you can now wear because you've got the body for it. It's about how you feel when somebody praises you, how you feel after a successful gym session, how you feel because you eat healthy. You need to feel this because that is a somatic language of the nervous system and the subconscious mind. And you have to do this daily. Like, this is not something you can do for fucking once a month, once a week. This is something you have to do 4 to 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. You have to, quite literally, every single day, remind yourself of who you are. It's like building a new habit. You can't do it once and hope that it sticks forever. You have to regulate yourself to be able to then do these things on a consistent basis, because neuroplasticity is very much do this consistency with that new feeling that comes with it. And that's how you're really going to see the change. And regulated effort. So like I said, things do require effort, but it has to be regulated. So before every training session that you go into, make sure that you're relaxed. This is an optional. This is actually just taking your body out of that stress state into the new regulated one. Okay? When you do that, higher testosterone, higher growth hormone is better for you. When you train out of fight or flight, it's a lot of cortisol, counterproductive for you. Before you eat, slow down, breathe, take the time to actually appreciate the fact that you're eating. When you do this, you're going to be able to digest food better. Your nutrient absorption is going to be better. You're going to feel fuller after you eat. A meal eaten while stressed is metabolically different from the same while eating while regulated. You can literally eat the same meal and your body interprets it differently. When the urge to restrict hits, so the restriction urge is a sympathetic nervous system response as a threat signal. Before acting on the urge to restrict, which is where everyone is, ask yourself, what is the emotional trigger? Why am I doing this? Like, what is going on? Like, so ask yourself, am I hungry or am I just dysregulated? And the answer will determine the response. And when you act from the regulated state, it produces a different behavior entirely. So when you are in that fight or flight state and you feel that I am hungry or I'm this, or you're going to launch at the first thing in which you can do to relieve yourself of that emotion. But then when you can regulate yourself, you relax your body, you put it back into that sensible ventral vagal state, your behaviors can be differently. This is why it's all about the state before the behavior, because the state determines the behavior. And when the urge to binge hits, like I said, it's the ultimate swinging back from restriction. So you always have to make sure that you're not restricting first. It has to come from, you have to make sure that you're eating sensibly. And this is one thing that you'll naturally find as you do this properly. But that binging urge is always the pendulum from the restriction. And again, you have to regulate first. The urge is physiological, not moral. Cortisol is high, ghrelin is elevated, dopamine is depleted. The intervention is somatic regulation, not willpower, not battling that urge not to binge, actually calming yourself down and going, I don't need that. I'm just dysregulated right now. So it's all about that regulated effort. So it's those 3 layers. It's, for a start, regulating yourself, shifting the identity, and then doing that behavior from a state in which is grounded in the self in which you're looking to become, but also a regulated somatic nervous system. Okay, and once you do those things, change happens at a ridiculous time and at a ridiculous speed. And one thing you need to realize is that you're not broken. This whole time you've been running a process which isn't meant to serve your body because physiologically it was broken. You are running a biology that is doing exactly what it was designed to do, to protect you and protect the identity in which you have. The work is not to discipline the body into submission to change. It's to change the nervous system from your identity level of who you actually are. And then once you do that, you'll be able to step into that new body and attract it with ease because you are that person. Regulate the system, shift the identity, apply the effort from this regulated state, and you will get yourself where you want to get to. Now that's a lecture running through exactly how to do this. If you want more help in doing this one-to-one, actually seeing like, where is it that you're going wrong? Where are those beliefs? What parts of your identity are broken and misaligned with this version of you which you're looking to step into? You can apply to work directly with me, and we'll run you through this process. We'll regulate yourself. We're going to apply a deep level of change. You're going to shift your identity so you naturally do the things which you're looking to do, and you're going to attract that change into your life at a speed which is beyond comprehension that you've ever seen before. But I've given you the framework. You can go do this yourself. If you just want further help, apply to work with me through the link in the description.